So, for athletes wanting to gain a spot in the academy system, what advice do you have for them?
For guys wanting to put their best foot forward, it's the work that's done away from the coach's eyes. It's the work that's done away from other players' eyes. What are you doing in your spare time, or what are you doing in your training that sets you apart from everyone else?
G'day, Justin. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on board, and congrats on the new bub that has just been born as well. How's maternity leave treating you?
Very good. I'm itching to get back coaching as well, but keeping nice and busy around the house with two little ones now, so little girl to add to our little boy.
No, that's really good. Future athletes as well in the making.
Well, hopefully they don't take after their dad and they hit the ground running. But yeah, whatever they want to do, I'll support.
That's awesome. So, how's the year going so far, and what have you been up to besides being a dad?
Yeah, I've been busy, so still full time at school through the St Kevin's strength and conditioning department. I finished up with Rebels in our academy and pathway system in November last year. Sort of said I'll approach dad life, put a bit of time into home and everything, and an opportunity came up with the Western Bulldogs through their VFL program. So currently there, been there since December last year, and yeah, just enjoying being in and amongst a different sport, and also having the opportunity to learn from some good coaches in there as well.
No, it's really cool. I'm another person who's delved into the Aussie rules. So, how are you finding that transition from being involved with rugby?
Yeah, it's funny. It's definitely much different, especially probably culturally is different. The I suppose the physiological demands are different. There's a big focus on the conditioning element, the sort of running compared to rugby, where we mainly based our work around our strength and power and that sort of like anaerobic speed and things. But it's definitely good, and it sort of takes me back at home. I played a lot of Gaelic football, so the sort of transference across there was much greater to AFL and my sort of knowledge towards rugby was at the time.
Yeah, that's really cool because you sort of combined, both sports, AFL and then rugby into one, and probably performs Gaelic footy with all the hard hits and running that they do in that sport.
Yeah, that's it. And I suppose the level of athleticism across all sports all intertwines anyway. So I guess that's our job to bring it all together.
Yeah, 100%. So, growing up as a young lad, what sports did you play, and do you still play any sports right now?
Don't play any sports right now. I've just sort of made the sacrifice. It was either play or coach, and I was enjoying the coaching. Plenty of opportunities came up, and I suppose to divide time with family, friends, it would be a bit selfish to add in that I want to play sport as well. But growing up, I played a lot of Gaelic football, played a lot of soccer. Were my two main sports really. So whenever you move over here, and a lot of people, especially within the school environment, refer to you as the rugby guy. It's it's very funny because they ask me to pass and I get caught out quite quickly.
No, that's funny. So, if you think you could make it in one sport, if you weren't a coach, what sport would that be?
I would have played soccer.
Play
Probably
soccer?
would have played soccer. The soccer is a brilliant one because the older you get, the more experience you get, the less you have to run.
Yeah, just strategically put yourself in a position to wait for the ball, or
Of course,
yeah.
of
And
course,
that this
let the young guys do the running.
Yeah, and there's plenty of divisions, so you could always just play against men who are quite older or at similar age level as well, which is nice. Whereas in rugby, it does vary quite a bit depending where you are playing in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Mm. So, did you always want to become a strength and conditioning coach? And when did you, sort of decide you wanted to become one? And yeah, that interest for it as well.
Yeah, it's a funny one because my journey's probably very different from what people have been on here. So when I finished school back in the day, I had essentially decided I'll go into teaching, but when the time came to applying for university and stuff, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself straight away as a teacher, so I went into sports science with the view that I'll pick up teaching at the very end of it. But by the time I got to the end of it, I was sort of very interested in that sports science, strength and conditioning world. And to be honest, I probably just did enough of study at that time. I just went from school all the way through. So I went into the workforce, done some work in sort of like group fitness and things like that, more so personal training. In Ireland at that time, there wasn't huge opportunities to where I lived to be involved in strength and conditioning. It was just like a few local teams, but our closest professional team would have been 2 hours away. So Ulster Rugby would have been our closest professional team. So I spent a few years just working within local teams while managing a leisure centre as well. And I spent a little bit of time then with Ulster Rugby towards probably about 2010-ish. Went up and spent some time with a guy called Johnny Davis. And that's when it just sort of cemented for me. I just went, yep, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. So kept in contact with him over the years, and it was actually him suggested coming out to Australia to do like just a little bit of time, and yeah, the rest is history from there.
No, it's a really awesome journey and something that a lot of S&C coaches can relate to. And, starting off in the fitness industry and then slowly working your way into becoming a strength and conditioning coach, because it's not really, a clear pathway to becoming a strength and conditioning coach. It's getting much better right now with the ASCA here in Australia, but you sort of, were wondering, how do I become an S&C coach for Ulster? How does that
Yeah,
sort of come about, and if there's only so many jobs, then what else can I do as a strength and conditioning coach around the world?
yeah, exactly, and that's the beauty I think, and I always talk to people about getting in front of groups and getting in front of for say clients for the better example. And there's much more access to that now with private facilities having really good setups that you can really implement and transfer your knowledge. Probably something that happens a fair bit now is we've got graduates coming out. Reality is, as you say, there's X amount of jobs for Y amount of candidates. So given every opportunity to get in front of people is huge and not to
Mm,
be underestimated.
yeah, 100%. And yeah, if you can just get your coaching hours out up, and then once you are pretty confident, go out there and start doing some educational stuff as well,
Yeah,
or present at a ASCA, personal development, networking type of things, and yeah, challenge yourself in that area.
yeah, exactly. And going back to that sort of work within the leisure centre and the fitness classes in there, you do meet all sorts, and it gives you a real understanding of how to talk to people and how to approach methods differently. So I never look back at that time and say I wish I had have done this or that. I look back and I'll say, wow, I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to build relationships, learned how to communicate, and they're all the skills that is needed in sort of high level coaching.
Yeah, those are like the skills you need sort of first, and then you add the programming in and all the other jazz that we know how to do as S&C coaches. But if you
Yeah,
can't build
exactly.
the relationships and communicate effectively, then it doesn't matter about your program.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The programming hasn't changed all that dramatically in the last 100 years, or sort of understanding of it has, but if you can't communicate an effective program, it's not going to be effective.
Mm. So this year in the World Cup, are you just cheering for Ireland or are you cheering for the Wallabies as well? You know, is it 50-50 or 70-30? Like what's going on there?
Through passports, you're putting me under pressure.
Mm.
The heart will always be in Ireland, and the fact that they've got more chance of winning it helps as well.
Oh, ouch. I don't know. You know, you just look at the history of who's won the World Cup. England are the only ones who have been
Yeah,
the Northern Hemisphere to actually win. It's just
I
been
know.
dominated by Southern Hemisphere, so it'll be
It's all to
interesting.
play for. It's
Mm,
all to play for. I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be one of the best.
mm.
Definitely. There's multiple teams that you can't rule out.
100%. And, you know, there's 100 days now or 99 days to the World Cup. So, you know, it's crunch time now. You really got to make sure that you're preparing yourselves. And if you have been injured, you know, get that rehab done because, you know, you got really limited opportunities to get picked in your country's World Cup squad. And, you know, here in Australia, Alan Alaalatoa, you know, he's on a 6 to 8 week calf injury. So, you know, hopefully he gets back for the Wallabies soon. And then, you know, you're looking at Angus Bell and Taniela Tupou, like they're um, are cutting it fine to
Yeah,
be ready for the World Cup. So it's
for time.
yeah, you're gonna have to get your squad ready to go. And like you said, it's gonna be a really good World Cup. There's so much competition, and you know, Ireland are coming in with form. France, you know, they're in home soil. Can that extra buzz get them up for the World
Yeah,
Cup? And is there a dark horse out there? Is there a team like Fiji or just someone out there who's just going to come out of nowhere and actually perform really well? So we'll
yeah.
have to wait
Just
and
waiting in
see.
the wings.
Mm.
Yeah, they just need a kind draw.
100%. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. So you spent 5 years working with the Melbourne Rebels through the pathway system. What was it like working in the pathway system, and what were the coaching requirements, sort of on a weekly basis, as well for people and coaches out there who might not have had this experience before?
Yeah. First point, I loved every minute of it. I just love working with that demographic of up and coming rugby players, whether that be from 15 to 23, from 14 to 23, just plodding along and having a clear vision in mind. In terms of coaching requirements, again, it differs massively throughout the year. Just you've got different periods that you have more access to them. Like on for example, our senior academy would be looking at 4 to 5 times a week with those guys, and with a bit more access because they're at university, they're either working, some of them are in training within the Super Rugby setup as well. And then our junior academy, sort of under 18s, you're looking at sort of 3 to 4 sessions a week.
No, that's really good. How did you manage to make sure that the kids weren't doing too much sort of through the preseason and in season because they're also training and playing with their clubs? How was going around that? Yeah, in your experience.
Yeah, it's always a tricky one, and it's always one that as coaches you can have as many spreadsheets and as much technology as you like, but if you're managing a kid's load and he's out in the playground at lunchtime playing murder ball, then there's only so much you can control, and it takes a while to understand that, and it takes a while to accept it as a coach that you can't control everything. But again, it comes back to that relationship building. So we're quite lucky that in Melbourne, or in Victoria, it's a small enough network in the rugby community. So we have points of contact at most of the clubs where we can actually see what the players are doing, or at least have a chat with one of the coaches. Hey, how's Tim traveling? How's this guy traveling? What's your sessions sort of look like? And having that educational talk with the players as well, that they feel open and honest when they come to you at training, and they can actually describe to you, look, we done a big running block, we done this, we done that, and then we can adapt their sessions. But we can control what we can control from our end through technology, through Smartabase, GPS, all of that. But when they're away, we do depend on them being honest with us in terms of what they're doing. And again, having that relationship with schools, with clubs, that we can have the players' welfare at the sort of pinnacle.
So when they are training of you in those, it doesn't matter if it's the junior or senior academy at the pathway, are they doing more? It's just a straight field gym session, or is it just gym, or is it just field? And when you are doing those sessions, are you trying to focus on certain things that they might not be getting at the club trainings or the school trainings?
Yeah, good question. Have we sort of split our sessions into three main themes. So we have our physical session, our fast session, and then our blended session. And within those, we work off an extensive and intensive sort of drill selection. So we'll blend them in with our gym sessions. So usually, depending on the time of year, again, say for example, pre-season when they've got nothing on, and we're in a 4 day a week thing, we'll have two gym. So we'll have say a Monday standalone gym. Wednesday we'll have a mix. Thursday we'll have field, and then Saturday we'll either have a big field session or a mix as well. So we're trying to hit a little bit of everything with them.
Awesome. And then on that, on the days that they're not training, is that just a complete rest day, or are you also prescribing some things for them to do?
Depending on again the time of year, but we do tend to try and get them to have rest and recover. So we do talk about in our educational sections, we do talk about the importance of rest recovery, why we need it. Understanding as well that they might have different things on. So they might have school training, they might have club training coming into this time of year, especially. We do try and encourage at least 2 days of nothing, and then we will give them options. So we'll have our WhatsApp group or whatever, and we'll have options of active recovery sessions. So whether that be like a walk, a light jog, bike, anything like that.
Mm.
But again, just depends time of year and what access we have to them. Sometimes we do have to prescribe different sessions to them. Say like over a Christmas break when we've got no access to them, we will prescribe sessions there that they will have to do on their own.
Awesome. So what would you think is the, best way to go about your training for those junior athletes? So we get this all the time with people reaching out who are maybe say 12 to 14, but I'm just wondering, okay, can I do this gym program? It's like, okay, it's a bit harder because you're somewhere around the world, but when you have access to them there, what would you say is the ideal sort of number of trainings that they should be doing when they're at that younger age period?
Yeah, again, it's case by case, but we're looking probably in our academy athletes a minimum of 3 gym a week to maintain, and anything on top of that is extra. But again, it has to be structured and it has to be prescribed by like an accredited coach or someone that in your position or on my position. If it's just tapped off the internet off bodybuilding.com, then we obviously we've a bit more education to do. But the the principles of rugby, the underlying principles of our development for rugby doesn't really change. So we've got an underlying principle of strength, an underlying principle of power. It's just how we get that and what sort of biological or chronological age the athlete is.
Mm. And if you haven't reached that academy setting and you're an athlete wanting to get into it, at least you know now what's some expectations of you. You got to be training in the gym multiple days a week, and you got to be able to perform out in the field as well. And then you might have that blended session, as you said. You might be from gym to field or field to gym, and
Yep.
you need to be able to do both sessions. So if you got a kid out there, or you're a young person listening, like what's required of you now, and you really got to make sure that you're willing to do that type of work when you get into it, because it's not just good enough to get into the setting. You have to be able to perform as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to the old saying, it's will it make the boat go faster? So will like what you're doing, will that make you a better athlete? Will that so if you're a halfback looking to work on your speed and power and getting around, is 10 by 40 bicep curls gonna help that?
Mm.
Like you'll look good, but you mightn't get to the ball, or you mightn't affect any play. So you always have to take it back to, I think, if advice to younger athletes that may not have access is, what's the principles of the game? How can I develop those principles? And what are some foundational easy movements that I can develop? And again, everyone doesn't have access to a gym. So how can I do this at home? How can I
Mm.
do it safely? What's a rep range? What are we looking for strength? What are we looking for power wise? It's there's loads of information out there, but it's always going back to that first principle of, will it improve my game?
And improving your game doesn't necessarily just have to be straight away, which I think most people default to in rugby, is getting bigger. It doesn't just have to be that, like there's many different shapes and sizes, and you would have experienced so many different shapes and sizes through the academy setting. You got to make sure that your craft is down packed first. For a halfback, there's no point getting your biceps really big and then it's affecting your ability to pick up the ball and move around because your biceps are so damn big. You got to make sure that your passing is on point, because it
Yeah,
doesn't matter how big your biceps are. If you can't pass, then you're not going to get selected.
exactly. And that's where you come into sort of like individually, where you at? Are you doing enough passing? Are you doing enough they always talk about in the AFL world, they're massive on craft. They're huge on it. It's like kick, repetitive, repetitive. Can you pass off both sides? Can you hold a strong position in your scrum? If you can't do that, then all the strength and conditioning in the world isn't gonna help you.
You need to seek out the craft from your coaches, and then understand the drills that they have set for you, and then it makes our job easier as S&C coaches. Sweet, this is what you need to work on. This is what can help in the gym. That's going to help that, and instead of us sort of just prescribing something that may or may not help. So
Yeah,
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 definitely
exactly.
get your craft down packed.
Exactly.
Mm.
100%.
So, as S&C coaches, how do you create a successful academy for rugby athletes to grow and reach their full potential?
Yeah, that's another cracking one. If you don't have a fun environment for players coming into, they're not going to want to come in. First of all, now I don't mean you're cracking jokes and everything like that, but if you have a welcoming, friendly, fun environment, and create an atmosphere that people want to be part of, like people talk about culture and things like that. Culture, you can't build culture, if that makes sense. It's either there or it's not. So you develop it, but you can't build it. Um, so having somewhere that they enjoy coming into is number one. Having somewhere that they'll learn and they respect is number two. So when I talk about respect, I talk about like everyone has mutual respect for everyone else. Doesn't matter of sort of where you come from, what your goals are. You respect the environment that you're in. You respect the coaches, the time, the effort, the expertise that they're imparting on to you, and you respect the learning. So you respect learning from each other, learning from coaches, learning from, it doesn't even have to be coaches, it can be sort of dietitians, it can be anything at all. So creating that sort of fun learning environment really breeds that success.
Yeah, because they're coming to see you to do some hard work. So you don't really want to go to a place where you're like, shit, I don't really want to go today type thing. It's like, okay, but if you change it up, you're like, yeah, sweet. I get to come into the academy setting. I really enjoy my coaches and my fellow athletes and teammates. And I know we're going to do some hard work, but I'm really enjoying it. So if you can get that balance right, you're going to have a really good, successful academy setting.
Yeah, exactly. And it all comes down to sort of like that little bit of gratitude as well. So that gratitude for the staff being there, the players being there, that the sacrifices, especially in an academy setting, the sacrifices parents make. So like where we were based everywhere in Melbourne at a stage, and then we finally sort of honed into our Amy Park setting. But you have kids traveling with their parents 2 hours, so like a 4 hour round trip after school. So so having that gratitude to parents, the a lot tighter and builds that little bit more resilience as a group.
100%. I really like that. So that's sort of how the coach is to make the environment and be successful. What do the athletes have to do in the academy setting to be successful?
Hard work for that's the number one, and they always talk about hard work beating talent. That's definitely true in academy settings, and that's what sets academy players apart when they go into professional systems. Is talent will get you there, and talent will get you noticed. But when you're there, you're on an even playing field, unless you're a complete freak. You're on an even playing field with everyone else. So it's up to you of how hard you want to make it. So how hard you want to train, how hard you want to um, push yourself. Is there gaps in your sort of armor that you identify yourself without having to be told? And what do you do to address these outside of outside of that sort of time with the academy? So that one-on-one time is fine, but what are you doing away from the program that sets you apart?
The
Like
talent the talent got you into the program, and now it's the hard work that's going to maintain your spot and progress through the program.
yeah, exactly. And I guess we've probably all seen it where I was go back to 2014 or 2015. I was working with the Storm under 20s, and you could see straight away, you could see this sort of split almost. You could see half that you always had to be on top of. You're like, right, get your prehab done, get this done, get that done. And it was almost like constant babysitting. And then the other half were like, never had to tell them anything. Sometimes you had to pull some of them back because they wanted to do too much. But in terms of that, like sort of 1% or professional um, point of difference, you knew that these guys were good players, but they're going to be club players forever. Whereas these guys would go on, and a lot of them have went on to play quite successful through the NRL system, and are still playing at the top level. And it's no surprise. It really isn't a surprise. It's you can see it in players and coaches, or coaches can see it in players. Of you don't need to babysit players. If players have the right drive to succeed, all you're doing is feeding that process. But the players themselves will drive it, and that's what sets the guys that go on to do big things apart.
And I think athletes, you really need to pay attention now to what your strength and conditioning coaches are saying because and giving you advice on because coaches or the best head coaches that I've met or the head coach of the academies have all the faith in the world in their S&C coaches. And they're going to ask them to say, hey, okay, how's athlete A doing? How's athlete B and C? Sweet. This one's, I don't have to babysit him. He's good. He's excelling in everything. Athlete B, I'm having to work extra hard just to get him to do the basic stuff, and he's playing up a bit. And then C's, a bit of both, and they will look at that like, sweet, let's get rid of that athlete then. If he's not working hard and showing respect to the academy system, and we'll let him go. We'll happily do that. Doesn't matter about the talent or anything like that. I've seen it like players have just been let go because of their behavior. So
Yeah.
you really got to make sure that as the athlete, you're not just saying, oh, he's just an S&C coach. He doesn't have any say of my selection. It's like, no, he does, and he does have a lot of influence as well. And yeah, you just got to make sure that you're working hard, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think in those settings, everyone has like an equal part to play. So the S&C or athletic performance is just another branch of coaching. So everyone works together in a silo to get the best possible outcome for the players. And there's I think Adrian Thompson came down a few years ago and spoke to our players, and one quote that he came out with that really resonated with me, and it's one that I used for years with him. It's, if it's to be, it's up to me. So when you relay that back to the players, then it gets them thinking about, well, if I can control what I control, so if you are struggling in one aspect of your game, if you're struggling in one aspect of your physicality, then you can control that. You can take it on board and control it. But it's having the maturity and the self-determination to drive that. Because especially like you've probably seen it before, there's plenty of academy systems and plenty of players that have ever come through academy systems that they rock up, they get the gear, and they're happy.
Mm.
They're just happy to be able to wear the branded badge back to school. They're sort of like, I've got it, I've made it, I'm happy. Whereas you'll see guys that really, really, really have that clear goal and that clear sort of vision in mind, and they're going to work till they get there.
Mm. It breaks my heart a lot when players get into these opportunities and just don't make the most of it, because you have those other players who you might have met along the way and they just weren't good enough to get into the academy, or they just missed out because of this other player, and that player might not take it as a real opportunity, and like you said, just gets the gear and like, yeah, I can strut around this and show off what the academy system that I'm in. But you do feel for those athletes who just don't make it. And if they did make it, they would just shine in
Yeah,
that academy system.
that's it, and that's the unfortunate reality of it. But the thing is, it's for some of them, it's too late before they realize, and then
Mm.
for some players, it builds that hunger where they might not make it one year, but then each year by year it goes on and goes on, and you see guys getting Super Rugby contracts based off Stute Shield uh, contracts, and like they were Shield down here. The opportunities are always there, but um, within those academy settings, it definitely gives you a leg up.
Mm.
And that's
100%.
why we always go back to that respect for the environment and the teachings and learnings from everyone else. And we really drive we really did drive when players were with us, that they go back to club or school or wherever it is and they lead. So if we went out on a Saturday to watch a game, we should be able to pick out academy players with ease, because they should be the ones doing the talking, they should be the ones leading, and they should be the ones that are standing out head and shoulders above the rest. And if they're not, then in review that next week, that's when we sort of like we'll have a chat of, what do you think? How did you go here? How do you think you could improve? And then that
Mm.
along with that comes that like emotional maturity as well.
Yeah. 100%. And that sort of answers the question of, how do athletes make the most of their trainings in the academy system? And, you've answered it quite well. It's, making the most of the opportunities, working hard, respecting your coaches, and then taking everything you've learned from the academy system and then bring it back to your club or school and then allow your teammates to shine as well and give them some tips, some tricks that you're learning, and that will help them build their skills up and their confidence and gameplay. And then you can shine as a team, not just an individual, because you don't want to be the best player on a shit team. Because
Yeah.
are you actually the best player? Maybe not, but you'd like to be a really good player on a really good team as well. So yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm. Hi everyone. We just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby S&C blog today. You'll find our website link in our bio below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby S&C on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode. So, for athletes wanting to gain a spot in the academy system, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, the same, probably like taking it back full circle to the same advice for the guys that are in it is for guys wanting to put their best foot forward. It's the work that's done away from the coach's eyes. It's the work that's done away from other players' eyes. What are you doing in your spare time, or what are you doing in your training that sets you apart from everyone else? So if you've just missed an academy position by just that slight sort of like hairline, then what are you doing different this time to put yourself in contention? So if you there's two ways that you can react when you're not selected into an academy. You can bury your head in the sand and think the whole world's against you, or you can take it right. This is what let me down. I'm going to show them. I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to come back bigger, stronger, faster, with more skill, more intensity the next time. So, what are you doing different that sets you apart? Because every position, you can rate yourself. Am I better than him? No. How do I get better than him? By doing the exact same training as him? Nah, I'll do more than him and I'll do it better. And you just climb that ladder.
Yeah, it's a great thing because you're not just training for, say for that academy spot, you're training for that next opportunity. It's not just to get in there and be comfortable and this, oh yeah, I've been doing this training for a bit. It's like, okay, can you then take your game to the next level? Because that's what
Yeah.
you're ultimately striving for.
Yeah, and that's it. Like the academies are sort of like a holding pattern, would you say? It's like you get in, you get more access to sort of better resources that should enhance and propel you to the next stage. You don't want the highlight of your career to say I was in an academy. When you're in the academy, what's the next step? What's the next goal? What's the next goal after that? Can you propel yourself? So I'll be open and honest. There's a few kids came in years ago, and we had the chat. That was like, what's your what's your goal? I want a gold jersey. It's like, right, X. This is when you want your gold jersey. This is where we're at now. How do we get there? And then you come up with we do a lot of like individual development plans. So they cover everything. Like they cover our physical or tactical, technical, nutrition, everything like that. The players will rate themselves, the coaches will rate themselves, and then we'll sit down to the chat. We review that constantly. So if you tell me you want a gold jersey in 2 years, but you're not really willing to listen to what your coach has got to say. You're not really focusing on your diet. You're not focusing on your nutrition. You're sort of just going through the motions. Well, that's not a realistic target. So you revisit that and you set realistic targets. But if you're smashing each one of those, then that's you propelling to that goal.
Is that plan always been in place at your time in the pathways? Because it sounds awesome, and some kids might not think that far ahead. They might just be thinking, of what's going to happen this week type thing. Because
Yeah, it's
so yeah.
very, very loosely at the start when I started. But then after, I think it was my second or third year, RA took a real approach to building those academy systems. So it always used to be like a developing player program until RA followed the sort of IRFU and English rugby, and actually invested money and coaches into our academy settings. So where where we're at compared to other countries, we're probably a fair bit behind, but we have really good people in there now that have this vision in mind. And um, one of the kids that I said about the gold jersey actually played last weekend when Australia beat New Zealand. So he got that gold jersey. So that was like a little moment where you go, he bought in and he done everything, and it wasn't just like that. Like
Mm.
he didn't have just a smooth sail through. He overcame things. He sort of went out, came back, but these things are all there now from a Rugby Australia point of view, and it's you've got really, really good people there at the top with these things in mind. So yeah, really gives the players every opportunity to succeed.
And it just adds more advice to those kids who are wanting to get into the academy system. Like you really have to have a clear pathway of what you want to do once you're into the system, and then what happens after that as well, and that flow and effect for the rest of your career.
Yeah, exactly. And look, things move fast and they're pretty agile. I go back to when I started. We had a kid that came in as a number 8, and like superb ball carrier, handling, everything. The harsh reality was he probably wasn't going to make it at the top level as a number 8 because of his like his stature, his sort of anatomical features. But he was advised that if he wanted to go all the way, he should consider playing front row, perhaps a hooker, whatever. Took him a while, let him go off and think of what he wanted to do. He came back about 3, 4 weeks later. He said, "Yep, I'm committed to learning the craft, learning. I trust what my coaches have to say." He's playing Super Rugby now. So these are the things you might come in with one thing in mind, but when you listen to experts in their field, then they can see things a little differently, and that's where that sort of player centered approach comes in, where we talk about player centered holistic programs where these are 16, 17, 18-year-old kids that are emotionally mature enough to buy into the process and understand where coaches are coming from.
Mm. It's an interesting point you bring up, because I think from a young age we're all sort of set, okay, I play this position and I don't want to adventure out to being something that I'm not. And it's quite, scary to say, okay, you're not going to be number 8 anymore. You're going to come in and be a hooker. That's quite scary change, and some people might not accept that, but I think that's the beauty about rugby is we have so many different positions to play. So which means you have multiple opportunities to be really good in that position. And what happens if you play that position and that's the one where you make it and have a really good career, but you might just be, too ego driven to say, nah, I don't want to do it. I'm going to stay here. So I think it shows you when your coaches, and when you were in that position, you had that honest talk with them, and then there was great buy-in from both parties. You had great trust with each other. Say, okay, if you do this, you can have the potential to be successful. If you stay down this path, you might not have the opportunities that you want.
Yeah, exactly. And then that like takes you back to the question previously of how do you build a successful academy? And it's moments like that where you see that trust between two parties. That to me is success.
100%. And a good example of that is with Scotty Seo as well. Scott Seo was a number eight, um, all the way up until I think around 16, 18 as well. And he was a late bloomer in terms of coming to the front row, and then went on to play, 100 over 100 games for the Brumbies, over how many games for the Wallabies, go to World Cups, and have a really, really good career. Now he's playing over in the UK. So if he didn't make that transition, would he be in the same position as he is in now?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the game's ever evolving as well. The game's becoming faster. The old days of just sticking three big guys at the front is gone. They need to be proper athletes. So
Mm.
that transition from a number eight to sort of one, two, or three shouldn't be all that massive these days.
Yeah, and then use all those skills that you have from your number eight and
Yeah,
be a
exactly.
ball wrecking prop or hooker, because you're going to have a few more opportunities really close to the line. So that's when all that power that you did have from a number eight, now use it as a big front row.
Exactly.
No, it's awesome. I'm glad that that athlete as well did, make that decision. It would have definitely been hard and eye opening. I remember putting myself in a position where I just knew I wasn't going to be a tight head prop because I knew I was becoming too small for it, and I just wasn't strong enough. And that
Yeah.
I sort of had to bite my lip myself, and it did take a punch to my ego because, like, fuck, I don't want to go to loose head prop. That's the easiest side. I want to challenge myself all the time. And then I figured out, no, it was actually best for the team because the guy who was playing loose head was actually better at tight head. So,
Yeah,
sometimes you might find those hidden gems in there as well.
exactly. And that's that sort of maturity that you develop over the years.
Mm, no, I like that. So, this next question doesn't just have to be in the academy setting, but what should, roughly speaking, an in-season program look like now for rugby athletes in your ideal world and in your ideal team?
In season, yeah. So I think for in season, the big one is looking at windows of opportunity. So what I mean by that is where can we get sort of work into people and into players? So can is there a buy round? Is there a camp? Is there anything like that where we can sort of sacrifice some freshness to get some extra load, extra work, or are we better served pulling back? So that's in season. It just really depends on that. And when you look at an academy program, or say like we'll put a say an under 18 program, but whether it be club or not, what's the different times of the year that may cause external stresses? So if you look at exam time, stress is going to be up there. So your performance is obviously going to dip slightly. So if you've got that window of opportunity to take them up to a point with your sort of in season technical, tactical, physiological stuff, can you afford to just drop it down slightly and then take it back up? So your sessions probably are dictated by your varying schedules, dictated by injury, dictated by games at the weekend, outcomes, and things like that. So what can you do? Like you look at they talk about minimum effective dose. I think that's huge in season. You want to still keep your underlying principles of your strength, your power, your speed, your conditioning, but you still want to be on that slope, not the downward slope. you want to be in the sort of upward rather than downward, and you still want to work on that sort of like always go back to it, continuing to work on that sort of rate of force development. How can we really develop that in season?
Mm. And it's not just not training. Some athletes like to think, oh yeah, we've done all the work in the preseason and the off season. In season, I don't really have to do too much, and
Yeah,
it's not that. It's just like you said, that minimal dosage. Is it 2 gym sessions in the week? Is it doing some speed on the field and then doing some top up conditioning? And then with everything else that we're getting from the session, that might be enough for you to succeed during the week and on the games.
yeah, exactly. And it doesn't have to be as exhaustive as your preseason. Do you know, one thing that I found worked pretty well was early in the week would pull back from, like, this is, it's arbitrary and this is for just what worked for us at that one moment in time. We pulled back from squatting on a Monday to banded trap bars because we found the adaptation to it. We were still getting what we needed, and we weren't putting as much pressure through sort of like axle loading, anything like that.
No, it's really interesting. And those little changes at the correct time and with knowing your athletes really well could have massive advantages for them, and you could have enhanced performance in that group, and just it's something different as well. And if athletes really enjoy that change in training, they're like, sweet, I'm going to try this, and they might unlock something different that you might not have known if you hadn't have tried.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where the beauty of coaching comes into it, and the beauty of knowing your athletes, and knowing what makes them tick as well. So
Mm,
we do get we get that all the time, especially through school sports, where kids will think, well, I can't lift in season because I don't want to be sore for the fixture. When in reality, what you're lifting in season won't be making you sore if you've done the sort of baseline work. So it's maintaining or improving, and especially over the length of, say, like a Super Rugby season. If you have a season that's six months, then how you just can't
mm.
stop training. So it's educating your athletes around, well, the pros are doing it this way. Obviously, we don't have the same access, but we still need to train. We still need to maintain or better.
Yeah. I really, really like that point, because at the moment with my current Aussie rules boys, we have limited opportunities now in the in season to do all these things that we wanted to do, so we really have to make sure all our reps are quality reps, and the opportunities to be fast, you need to be fast, because you're probably not going to get them throughout the rest of the session. In my experience with the group that I have now is we don't reach the top speeds that I want to in sessions. So hence the reason we do it after the warm up and before any of the main stuff in the session. So it's like, okay, this is probably the only opportunity, say last night for Thursday, this is the last opportunity you have to be fast before game,
Yep.
and you got to make sure that when you show up to those field trainings, it might be the last opportunity for you to do scrummaging before a game. Have you done enough work and fix the things that you want to fix to then apply it in on game day as well?
Yeah.
So you really just got to make sure it's good quality reps, you're paying attention
Yeah.
and making the most of it.
Yeah. Definitely. And that's the thing. As coaches, I think we just need to be more agile in our approach to different scenarios, because
Mm,
nothing is straight line, and doesn't matter how much planning, periodization, anything you can do, and especially working within club settings like that may not have the resources that academies and things do. You'll have kids or you'll have players coming up to you on the night of training telling you about an injury they got at the weekend. So what can you do straight away off the bat to get what
mm.
you need to get into them, but also not sort of overdo it.
I think one of my favorite things about being a coach is the ability to problem solve. So,
Yeah,
like you said just then, you've got this wonderful session planned out, and
yeah,
then an athlete or half the team comes up to you and is like, "Oh, we're quite sore from this session, or that happened," and you got a couple athletes doing this, or the head coach has been like, "Hey, I'm cutting your warm up time by 15 or by 10 minutes,
yeah,
instead of your usual 15 minutes or something like that."
yeah,
The ability to problem solve and to provide solutions, bang, straight away. I think that's one of my favorite things about being a coach, because you come up with it. Sometimes you come up with it out of nowhere. You're
yeah.
like, where did this thought come from? Where did this drill come from? And you just think about it, you do it, apply it, and it works out quite well, or it didn't work out quite well. You learn from it, and then you move on.
Yeah, and that's it. And for new coaches coming through as well, that I suppose that just doesn't happen right away. So that sort of like ability to overcome things like that takes experience, and the more it happens, the easier it is.
100%. So, speaking of any sort of other, common mistakes or misconceptions you see athletes when sort of approaching S&C, what have been some of the things that you've seen athletes doing that when approaching strength and conditioning training?
Yeah, the old like especially younger athletes, the old split programming, and I'm going to do back and buys today and chest and tries tomorrow, like the bodybuilding approach. Um, I think that's probably the biggest one in youth settings, is thinking what you alluded to earlier, thinking the bigger is better. Whereas we have a massive focus as sort of like experienced strength and conditioning coaches on all round athletic ability. So yes, big is important sometimes. Where's the balance between too big and not big enough? But
Mm.
we have to look at movement efficiency, look at strength, power development, things like that. So um, trying to educate athletes away from that bodybuilding mentality to actually a more all round athletic ability mentality is the biggest misconception, and the biggest one that we always have to deal with.
Yeah, big might not, I'm just trying to think of a saying. Is like, big might be better, but only if you have the speed, conditioning, and skills to go along with it.
Yeah,
You
that's it.
don't you don't want to be this big fridge who can't really move on the field, because then you're just going to get caught out.
Yeah, and look, I think it's very easy for even for listeners or anything like that to go straight on Google and buy a program, and they might be branded as football specific, rugby specific, this specific, and some of them that I've seen over the years are like they're diabolical and not with the best interest. So I think having that coach that you can trust, it's very easy to buy a program off the internet that you could buy the exact same one as me, but our goals and outcomes could be very different.
Mm.
So um, I suppose having that enough knowledge to understand the difference between a bodybuilding program and a rugby development program.
Yeah, it's just something that we all start off with, is that bodybuilding, split in the gym, and then you start to realize, okay, this probably isn't beneficial if I actually want to be a proper athlete.
Yeah.
So if you are out there and you're doing your bodybuilding split, if that's what you want to do, sweet. But if you actually want to, maximize your athletic ability, do something else.
No, that's not dismissing a little extra set of bench or a few bicep
Mm.
curls at the end of the session.
Yeah, you do need that every now and again.
We're all partial to that, but yeah, it's being selective in your education, being selective in the approach you take.
Mm. So, what are some sort of mistakes or misconceptions you see in strength and conditioning coaches that sort of you think could be improved upon?
Um, the misconception probably being painted across, and I've seen it a few different ways. I've seen graduates come out that have masters in this and a masters in that, but have never actually stood in front of a group and coached. So when they get out, they can give you the contextual, like the textbook definition of how to squat, but they can't teach people how to squat. They can't break it down. One of the big thing I've noticed coming through, so I present as well on the ASCA coaches or courses. One thing that I do see is uni students or graduates come through that haven't been in that like coaching system or coaching environment over queuing. So they'll really, so in the terms of like say one squat, they'll fire like six things. And that was a conversation I had with one of the students was, why are you giving so much? And he said, because at uni you get more marks for cues, the more cues you give. I'm like, can you see where this is like, can you see where this is confusing? So I think to go back to your question, misconceptions around the theoretical to the actual practical, and the practical takes time to master, whereas theoretical you can learn that, but you just need time to master the practical element of it.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense, and it's not just rambling.
No, it makes perfect sense to me, and hopefully it makes sense to everyone else. It's applying everything that you learn for uni and then into the actual world. And multiple examples that I get, or just observations from some of my interns that I have over the years, is probably just in the warm up. We might start the warm up at a certain area when they're like, hey, why didn't you do your hammy sweeps, your lunges, leg swings, and all that stuff? I was like, oh, okay, because the athletes, they have to do that before they come and do the actual warm up.
Yep.
And I only get 10 minutes, so I'm going to be wasting 5 minutes on that, and then I can only do the next 5 minutes on the next part of the warm up. So
Yep.
and they're like, oh, okay, so if the athletes take some ownership and they do all that, then we come here and do this stuff and make it more intense and a bit more fast paced and all that. That's how we can actually get into the athletic development space and really make sure that they're warmed up. But yeah, them coming from uni, like, oh, we just learned to do this, to do that, to do that.
Yeah, like
okay, but what happens if I throw the spanner in there? Is like you only have 8 minutes to do that. Oh
yeah.
shit, how do we do that? I don't know.
But as well, the world we're living in now, we've got so much ability to educate players and athletes around the simple things. Like you shouldn't really need to coach a leg swing. So if you can put together like for new coaches coming in, if you can have like a little bit of a preparation checklist where the players sort of have that right to entry before they start the warm up. So the likes of your lunges, your different sort of run throughs, hop series, anything like that. If you can prepare that, it does buy you that extra 10 minutes, and that extra 10 minutes in the warm up where you can work on some more technical things adds up over the period of the season. So that's spot on.
Yeah, and yeah, you just as S&C coaches, our time is very minimal with the group, so you got to make sure that you're maximizing that time and finding those little loopholes
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, completely.
So outside of work, what do you like to get up to in your spare time? And outside of being a dad and doing all the chores, is there anything you like to get up to?
I like walking around after a golf ball. So not very good, but I enjoy being out and around the outdoors. Love obviously music, concerts, catching up with friends, just all the usual stuff. And I am very family orientated, so like even just taking the little guy up to the park is just sort of a nice break away from everything. And um, at the moment changing nappies as well.
Yeah.
But nah, just the usual. There's nothing too untoward. Just like to switch off sometimes. just whether that be catching up with friends, music concerts, walking around, playing golf, and just yeah, just being sort of like a normal guy, I suppose.
Mm. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like Guinness? 10 being the best, the most, one being the least.
Hey, we go back to our academy stuff. It depends the time of year. This time of year, a 10. Belting hot summer, probably a 1.
Mm,
And
fair enough.
then autumn and spring or somewhere in between.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I always heard it was true that you get off the plane in Ireland, they just hand you a Guinness straight away. Like, here you go.
Oh, I wish. I wish I was back in January, and I can confirm that is not the case.
Fair
You
enough.
actually have to pay quite a bit of money back there for it now.
Mm, no, that's fair enough. So moving on to my favorite part of the podcast, the Triple H. So we're going to learn about a hardship, a hero, and a highlight of your coaching career. So hardship, can you think of a hardship in your coaching career that sort of stands out? And how did you get through this hardship? And what did you learn along the way?
Um, to be honest, like, and I know this sounds funny. I haven't had an awful lot of hardships, or not ones that I would think as hardships. You definitely have a few learning opportunities, um, from there. I wouldn't even off the top of my head, the one that sort of stands out at the minute, and it's not even my hardship. I was just there. Was last year, 2 years ago, we had our captain for academy do his ACL for the second time in captain's run night before a game, and absolutely devastating because was on a huge trajectory. Non-contact, just in the warm up, just sort of went to do a pirouette as a joke, snap. The hardship probably there for me was the relationship I had with him, and having to break it to him the next morning that when the scans and everything came back that it was an ACL rupture. So I think I probably took that very personally because I could see the hurt that was causing to him, and yeah, just having that conversation or having that sort of like initial triage was pretty bad. But then over the space of time, then you start to develop like a bit of a rehab plan, and hopefully watch him get back to where you know he will be and should be.
Yeah, it sucks. Athletes are out there wanting to chase their dreams and work hard and play the sport that they love,
Yeah,
and an injury just comes out of nowhere.
yeah, and
He was just doing a pirouette, as you said, having some fun, and then bang, it's gone. You're like, oh no! Like, and as the coaches, you feel I know it's hard to explain because it also happened to me last year when one of our boys in the 18s Brumbies snapped his ankle, and
yep,
he was such a hard working guy, and he was going to make the 18 squad for Australia, and he was just the unsung hero of the team. And then when he went down, I don't know, you just felt a part of you just I don't know, not die, but like a part of you just
it's thinking.
really it just hurt a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes people don't get it. Like players don't actually think that you've got that emotional attachment, emotional involvement. You say to friends, and you're upset saying to friends, and they're like, "Oh, but it wasn't you." It's like, yeah, but you have that sense of
Mm.
investment, and I think that's like as coaches, I think sometimes it's a little thing that we probably have to work through ourselves.
100%. And I'm glad to say that the athlete who did snap his ankle is back this year for the 18s Brums, and he's looking really good. So I'm really excited to see how he goes this season. But
Fantastic.
it's just hard, and we do take it quite personally as
Yeah,
S&C coaches because we think we could have prevented that or done something a little bit different. But yeah.
exactly. It's the what could I've done? What
Mm,
and so sometimes it's nothing. It's out of your hands.
yeah. So the next one, hero. Who was it? Who was your hero, or if you have multiple heroes, and why is this person your hero?
Yeah, well, cliche, but obviously my dad growing up, I always looked up to him, looked at always just to remember going through his trophies and everything that he won when he was younger, when he was playing. So you always go, wow, want to play football for whoever, get these trophies and be a good role model. In the sport, it's funny. I've got like different sports, different heroes. Always loved Paul O'Connell growing up from a rugby perspective. Just epitomized everything about being Irish. Like the speech that he gave at the start of one of the England games. I think it's available on YouTube. But as an Irish person, makes the hair stand up in the back of your neck. Um, Growing up playing Gaelic football, there's a guy called, and none of your listeners will know this, but a guy called Peter Canavan, just an absolute god like figure playing for our team, and again that's all amateurish, so that's all amateur football. So that this guy's playing in front of 80,000 people on a Sunday and lifting trophies, and then he's a teacher, so he's in teaching on a Monday. So growing up, he was always sort of someone that you wanted, and then um overall like politics and figures of history, you can pick multiple, but yeah, I think when you look back, it's such a question that you can't just narrow it down.
No, it's great that you have multiple heroes and you've learned from many different people and some Irish people that I've never heard of, but I'm glad they've made a positive impact on you.
I'll send you the link. They're
All
they're fantastic.
right. That's awesome. And last one, highlight. What is a highlight that stands out so far in your coaching career?
There's been a few, and like obviously wins and things like that stand out, but I probably for me a very personal one was a group of players that I took through from an emergency under 15 thing that I jumped in Brisbane, and uh, built this relationship, and then those players became the inaugural players in the first year of the Rugby Australia Academy, and working with them over the space of 3 to 4 years, eight, 6 out of 6 of them signed pro contracts with the Rebels 2 or 3 years ago. So seeing being part of that journey, and like having it's funny having the timeline of photos together all the way up, all the way through to they hit like senior academy, and some of them signed like pro contracts, and that is it's pretty special. And I think it's as a youth S&C coach, or as an S&C coach with huge interest in youth development, it's massive, and it's a great sell to other players as well, that you can document that journey all the way through.
No, I
Like
love that. Just
regardless of the wins, the trophies, anything like that,
mm,
I think if you were to pinpoint the day that they signed and the day that it was released and they done a big media thing, it was like, yep, that's that's I've been part of that. I've been like a small piece of their journey.
yeah, no, it's an awesome thing to see, and it just warms your heart as well when that happens to some athletes that you've put a lot of time and effort into, and got to understand their story and seeing them achieve their goals. It's just awesome to see.
Yeah.
So, last couple of questions. If you could only give 1 or 2 points of advice for coaches out there, what would you say?
Get in front of people, learn learn your craft by making mistakes, learn your craft by trying things with athletes that aren't going to cost you your job. So when I say that, if you've got a club team or a really young academy athlete, try something that you wouldn't try with a Super Rugby player. Try something that's not going to cost you millions of dollars, but also be willing to change your philosophy. So you may have a philosophy and an understanding now, but hopefully in 5 to 10 years, you'll look back at things that you done 5 to 10 years ago and you go, yep, would do that different, or I've developed as a coach in that sense.
100%. Some great advice there. And same question, but now for athletes. If you could sort of sum up everything you've said today, but just put it in 1 or 2 points of advice.
If it's to be, it's up to me. So
if it's to be, it's up to me.
If you want it, you have to set yourself apart, chase it, work hard, and modify, don't miss in season and injury wise.
No, I love that. So who should be my next guest on the podcast? Is there any coaches or athletes that sort of come to mind that should jump on for a chat?
Yeah, well, there's so many, but I think with the rugby background and the rugby, there's probably two that jump to mind. Two former colleagues of mine, Brendan Whelan and Nick Henderson. So Nick wouldn't be any stranger about Canberra or
He used to
rugby.
play for the Brumbies. Yep.
So Nick is one of the most fascinating guys that I've ever worked with, and one of the most down to earth guys that I've ever worked with. So Nick's in, I think his new title is he's heading all the pathways for RA, and then Brendan is our athletic head of athletic development, was with the Wallabies, the Wallaroos, but is now spending majority of time with the junior Wallabies. So definitely worth having a chat with them too, and they'd give you a lot more insight into that sort of RA system, as they've pioneered it essentially. So it's their baby. And then the other one is a guy that works he works in a private practice, but has ticked the boxes with all pro sports teams, a guy called Jake Leslie. So I think Jake would be an interesting catch for you as well. But that's 3 that I would definitely listen to.
All righty. I'll have to reach out and see what they're up to. But thanks for that. So where can listeners find you on social media if they do want to, keep up to date or reach out to you?
Not a big social media guy. If they want to follow my life adventures with my 2 kids and my dog, Justin_Blee on Instagram. Happy to chat there and that. But professionally, if there's any way of reaching out, LinkedIn. I'm not sure what the handle is, but sure there's not too many Justin Blees around.
Nah, probably not.
Yeah, so even if they hit me on LinkedIn, we can swap contact details and go a little bit through there. But yeah, I'm not a huge social media influencer.
That's a good, or not yet. You could be soon one day. Who knows?
Not yet. That's it. If it's to be, it's up to me.
Yeah, 100%. So thanks for joining me today, Justin. It's been awesome to, get to know you a bit better and understand more of the academy setting and what was, required of you as a coach, but also how you made it successful for your athletes as well. I think there's really good bite-sized chunks in there of information and advice. And thank you for sharing that with me. And I know everyone will get some good information from this episode.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much for having me, and we'll hopefully keep in contact.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby S&C podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby S&C on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, don't wait, make that good decision, and join Elite Rugby S&C today, and take your game to the next level.